Arc Maxim, should customer interviews be structured or dynamic? And they ask, I think they both have pros and cons, but considering we are a small company still and the fact that we're still kind of trying to find product market fit, I would assume conversational would be more effective. And I don't think, I don't know, this feels to me like one of those, why do you have to choose? I have had most success in like a semi-structured interview where I have a series of open-ended questions and I'm trying to get towards a specific point, and there's a whole thing in UX and customer research about you don't want to bias the person with the question itself. So there's ways that you have to ask these questions of customers so that you don't get the answer you're hoping to get. But you should have a structure. Just going to the customer and saying, what problems are you facing, is not actually helpful. They're going to tell you what's wrong with their ERP system. Like, that's not helpful if you're trying to solve something else. So you have to have some structure to it. What you don't want to do is get stuck in asking, if I gave you a thing that was a plugin to Excel and it let you do blah, 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 would that be good for you? That's a terrible question. Yes, that is far too structured, and you need to be able to listen to what people are saying and follow what they're doing and go do. The dynamic part of it is knowing how to listen, knowing how to hear what they're telling you, and know that's the thing that you should ask the follow-up question on. Drill in and understand, why are they doing that process? Why is it this thing? I'd say the number one thing you should be doing is asking to actually watch them do their jobs. Don't just go and ask them questions. Actually say, great, we think we're going to solve this type of process for you. Let me watch how you do it today, and let's see what are the pitfalls you run into, and we will see what we can do to improve those. I don't know. It's one of those questions that to me says this person just hasn't had to do these very often, and they're like reading a bunch of Google results and trying to figure out the next thing to do, because the answer is experience, unfortunately, and you have to just go in and start to talk to people and get good at listening skills. I don't know how to recommend people get good at listening skills. Is that a whole course we can offer to people? But yeah, it is about having a goal in mind and then adapting in the call itself. I don't know.
What I find that not the paradox of this one, maybe it's paradoxical. You're trying to figure out how to interview your customer. There's got to be a good way of asking the customer without directly asking them whether they want lemon meringue pie versus apple pie, right? So,
Right.
and sort of my point on that is, I could take the really scientific approach, like, and ask them a series of questions and say, cool, they are apple pie people, right?
Right.
Or I could sort of find somewhere in the middle, which is like, hey, we're going to give you a little sample of two ways of doing this exercise, right? Like apple pie or lemon meringue, and see how they respond to it. And it might be like, oh, well, we feel more comfortable doing that. And be like, yeah, but we weren't getting good information, so we can continue on that track, but we're going to need a little bit more detail from your side if you're okay that we go that way. So I'm almost like thinking to myself, like, the weird thing about this is, if you don't know your customer, maybe you need to ask some questions before you even get to the customer interview phase, right? Like this was why I had a relationship with certain levels in aviation. It's like, I knew who I had to fly to, and I knew who I was jumping on a call with, and I knew who was reaming me out and then would be reasonable. So then when we were doing sort of more formal process stuff with the customers, I knew how to approach it, whether it was this apple pie, lemon meringue, right? So yeah, it's a weird one for me. But it does feel like you had pointed out, it does feel like someone researching for the first time, like, oh, I've got to find one way that works for all of them, potentially.
Right.
And it's like, I don't think that's true.
And it doesn't. Well, and there are definitely purists and diehards out there, especially in UX research, who will say, like, the only question you're allowed to ask is what type of dessert do you like? And from there you have to go and branch out, and it's like, okay, but at some point you're going to be in a room with a customer yeah.
Sorry, when they ask that question, do they really ask that question, or you use that because I used apple pie and lemon meringue?
I use that because of apple pie and lemon
Okay,
meringue.
because I was about to like declare myself
No,
a
they're doing full behavioral, like, oh, actually it turns out that like people who like chocolate dessert prefer Apple devices.
I got there all by myself without any training on UX and UI. So no,
So
okay.
let's take the apple pie and lemon meringue.
Yeah.
UXers will often say, like, the correct way to do it is you ask them, what is your favorite type of dessert? How do you eat dessert? And the problem you'll run into is there are people who will give you wishy-washy answers of like, oh, it depends on the restaurant I'm in and I don't really have a preference. There are people who will give you the answer of like, oh, I like brownies and the only thing I eat are brownies. And so then you're kind of there are times when you get hamstrung. Sometimes that's really interesting because every single person you interview tells you that they like cookies and brownies, and not a single person brings up pie. That is helpful. That's helpful market research for you to realize we're trying to sell pies to people, and yet not a single person told us that pie was their number one preferred dessert. Cool. That's actually very helpful. But if you're going in with a specific thing that you need to figure out which of the pies you should make, at some point you do need to put your thumb on the scale a little bit and be like, okay, cool. Love to hear about the brownies and the vanilla ice cream. When it comes to pie, what is your favorite type of, right? Like at some point you do need to get a little bit, and that's where it is. It's semi-structured and it's dynamic in that you're hearing things, but you do need to have a goal in mind. If you are a pie selling company, hearing about brownies all day doesn't do you any good.
And I like that. And I guess that's what I was getting about, trying to get out of the scientific approach, which is if
Right.
if you ask me if I want pie or brownies and I pick brownies, which I probably wouldn't do, but I can tell
Right.
you what the tipping point for me picking brownies over apple pie would be. If the next question after I pick the brownie is structured in a way that, did you not pick the apple? Would it make a difference if you had sides with the apple pie? Yes. Right. And then it's like ice cream. No. Custard. Yes. I'm going apple pie with custard all day
Right.
long. No, it
Right.
doesn't end the conversation now. There is no other dessert that I will eat that I want more than apple pie with custard. So,
Or knowing it's because you like chocolate. Okay, is that stupid Burger King pie now an option for us to consider because it's the chocolate pie? No, I'm fully digging you on your dumb Burger King pie. We're coming back to that cold opening.
at least have the respect to call it by its name.
The moon pie, is that what it was
It's
called?
called a Hershey pie.
Hershey pie, whatever. But that's the thing, is you can still get some answers. Okay, great. They said brownie. Great. Why is it brownie? Because it is, more savory than sweet, because it always comes with vanilla ice cream. Okay. Apple pie always comes with vanilla ice cream. Maybe right, like that, those kinds of things. You absolutely can go down those roads, and you have to, that's why it's active listening skills. That's why it's being able to adapt and go on it. But you still have a point of view. You are still a company trying to do a specific thing. I mean, hopefully, if you're Oracle Workday, you're trying to do everything for everyone, and it's terrible. But hopefully you have a purpose here, and so you got to be able to figure out how to adapt and figure that out. And that's tricky. There's no book you're going to read that's going to help you figure that out. You and I on the fly started to figure out sides with pie because we've had to be in these situations, and we recognize the pattern of what we've done in the past, which is it doesn't matter whether we're talking about marketing technology or aviation technology. You got to have that skill set, and that's the skill set to work on.
Yeah, I often wonder what it's like to be the other type of people who not the people who are doing those same kind of calculations and keeping it to themselves and then making a decision, but the people who don't, who just make snap decisions where, again,
Right.
this is where companies have technology divergence, where it's like, it was never a consideration for me to actually check with anyone else if they've ever bought any software that does this. Or
Right.
I'm not even going to go to the market and see if there's anything that does this. I'm just going to start coding.
It's that lack of curiosity that I just cannot understand.
Yeah.
If only because I'd be super pissed 6 months later to find out I wasted those 6 months doing the thing, and there already was 4 other companies doing that, or I could have gotten and found the unique thing if I just asked other people. It's that curiosity that I want everyone to have.
Yeah, it would actually be my downfall too, because if I spent a year writing something that existed on the market, I'm super honest about this stuff. So I would actually feel compelled to go tell my boss and other stakeholders, by the way,
Right.
I made a big mistake about a year ago and I started to write Apache Airflow. Ugh.
Whoops. Uh-oh.
Whoops, and I think I should stop coding because I don't want to do the 4-year roadmap that they are ahead of me. Let's just use Apache Airflow.
Yeah, it is. And I think that goes back to I can't say it goes back to the conversation because I don't know the order that we'll edit this in, but we've talked about in the past or possibly in the future, being engaged in meetings. And I think that's probably that curiosity. Maybe curiosity is part of the thing that I'm trying to identify as like a core skill set. If you're not curious about things, if you don't have that thing to say, I'm not sure, I should ask this other person about it and get them to engage and teach me about it or share their knowledge about it. And now we both know, and we're now going to make a smarter decision as a result of that. Your meetings probably suck a little bit. And some of that's probably, I'm not going to say all meetings are your fault for not being curious. There's plenty of terrible meetings that are terrible for other reasons. But that curiosity is just something that's so important to me. And I hope it's important to other people. And I think you do a lot of jobs more effectively if you're just constantly curious about things.